The mountain man's cabin door shattered inward at midnight, blown open by a wind that carried more desperation than winter cold. And Owen Xerxes had his rifle loaded before his eyes fully opened to see the hulking shadow filling his doorway. "Please." The voice was guttural but unmistakably feminine, cracking with pain. "The baby. It is coming." Owen lowered his rifle slowly as his oil lamp flared to life, illuminating what stood before him. An orc woman, heavily pregnant, her green skin slick with sweat despite the frigid mountain air. Her small tusks jutted from her lower jaw, and her pointed ears were pressed flat against her skull in obvious distress. One hand braced against the doorframe while the other cradled her swollen belly. Her simple leather clothing was torn in places, and her bare feet left muddy prints on his wooden floor. "Christ Almighty," Owen breathed, setting the rifle aside and moving toward her. He was a large man himself, broad-shouldered from years of splitting wood and hauling game, his dark hair streaked with premature gray at 32. His hands, calloused and scarred, reached out instinctively to steady her as she swayed. "How far along are you?" The pain started at sunset. She gasped, her amber eyes squeezed shut. "I went to the town. Every midwife turned me away. Every door closed. They said they would not touch orc flesh, that they would rather see me die in the street." Owen felt anger flash hot in his chest. He knew Millbrook had its prejudices, had heard the way folks talked about orcs in hushed, hateful tones, but this was beyond cruelty. This was murder by indifference. "Come in, sit down," he said, guiding her toward his rough-hewn table. "What is your name?" "Grasha." Another contraction seized her, and she gripped the table edge so hard the wood groaned. When it passed, she looked at him with eyes that held both fear and a warrior's determination not to show it. "You are the mountain man, the one who lives alone. I hoped you might be different from the town folk." "Different enough not to let a woman give birth on my doorstep, that is for certain." Owen pulled his boots on with swift efficiency, then grabbed his heavy coat from its peg. "But I am no midwife, Grasha. I have pulled calves and helped a mare foal once, but I have never delivered a human baby, let alone," he caught himself. "I need to get someone who knows what they are doing. No one will come." Her voice was flat, resigned. "I told you, they hate us." "Maybe they will not come for you," Owen said, moving to the door and pulling on his gloves. "But they will come for me. I know someone, just hold on." He looked back at her, this desperate orc woman who had climbed his mountain in labor because she had nowhere else to turn, and something in his chest tightened. He had lived alone for 5 years, ever since the war ended, and he could no longer stomach living among people who celebrated the things he had been forced to do. The isolation had suited him. But this required him to re-enter a world he had gladly left behind. "There is water in the kettle, still warm, blankets in that chest," he pointed. "I will be back before dawn with help, I swear it." Grasha nodded, another wave of pain crossing her face. "If you do not return, I understand, but thank you for the shelter." Owen did not answer, just pushed out into the night and ran for his horse. The ride down the mountain was treacherous in the dark, the narrow trail slick with frost. Owen pushed his mare harder than he should have, urgency driving him forward. His breath came in white clouds, mingling with the steam from his horse's nostrils. The stars overhead were brilliant and cold, indifferent to the small drama playing out below. He thought about Grasha as he rode. She had climbed a mountain in labor. That took a kind of strength he could barely fathom. And where was the father? Dead, likely, or driven off. Orcs were not welcome in human territories anymore, not since the border wars had ended 3 years ago with treaties that satisfied no one. He had fought in those wars, had killed orcs on battlefields that turned mud to blood soup. He had also seen humans do things that made him ashamed of his own kind. The war had taught him that monsters came in all colors of skin. Millbrook was dark when he arrived, only a few windows showing lamplight. He rode straight to the edge of town where Delia Ambrose kept her small cottage, the only midwife he thought might have a conscience. She was in her 50s, a widow who had delivered half the babies in the county and had never turned anyone away for inability to pay. But would she ride out for an orc? Owen pounded on her door hard enough to rattle it in its frame. Delia Ambrose, open up. It took several minutes of pounding before a lamp flickered to life inside and the door cracked open, revealing Delia's lined face and suspicious eyes. She held a poker in one hand. Owen Xerxes, what in blazes are you doing here at this hour? I need you to come with me. Now. There is a woman giving birth at my cabin and she needs help. Delia's expression softened slightly. Owen, I am sorry, but I cannot ride all the way up that mountain tonight. If the woman is at your place, she can wait until morning when she is an orc. The words hung in the cold air between them. Delia's face hardened. Then you have wasted your ride. I will not attend to one of them. She is dying, Delia. She and the baby both, most likely, without help. She should have thought of that before coming into human lands. Delia started to close the door, but Owen jammed his boot in the gap. I am not asking, Delia. I am begging. You have delivered babies for women who could not pay, for women the town called whores and sinners. You told me once that every life is sacred in your eyes. Did you mean it, or were you just speaking words? Do not you dare, Delia hissed. Humans are one thing. Those creatures are another. They killed my nephew in the war. And humans killed hundreds of orc children when we burned their settlements in the Red Mark. I was there. I saw it. Owen's voice was hard now, the memories rising like bile. We all have blood on our hands from that war, Delia. All of us. But this woman has never done anything to you, and her baby certainly has not. Are you going to punish them for things other orcs did? Delia was silent for a long moment, her jaw working. Finally, she looked away. Even if I wanted to help, half the town would turn on me if they found out. I would lose everything. Then do it in secret. Come with me now, help her, and be back by dawn. No one has to know. You would lie for me. I have done worse things. Owen met her eyes steadily. Please, Delia, I have never asked anything of you or anyone else in this town. I keep to myself. I do not cause trouble, but I am asking now. Help her. The silence stretched. Then Delia sighed, a sound of profound weariness. Let me get my things. Relief flooded through Owen so intensely his knees nearly buckled. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Delia muttered. If that baby is breech or there are complications, I do not know enough about orc physiology to help. I could make things worse. You know more than I do. That has to count for something. 20 minutes later, they were riding back up the mountain, Delia behind him on the horse, her medical bag clutched against her chest. She did not speak during the ride, and Owen did not force conversation. He just focused on getting back as quickly as possible, praying they would not be too late. The cabin door still stood open when they arrived, lamplight spilling out into the darkness. Owen could hear sounds from inside, low groans of pain that made him urge the horse faster for the last 100 yards. They found Grasha on the floor, having apparently tried to reach the bed but collapsed partway there. She was curled on her side, breathing in sharp gasps, her body shaking. The puddle of fluid around her told Owen her water had broken. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Delia breathed, but she was already moving, her professionalism overriding her prejudice. She knelt beside Grasha, setting down her bag. Can you hear me? I am Delia, I am a midwife. I am going to examine you. Grasha's eyes opened, unfocused with pain. You came. Apparently I am a fool. but Delia's hands were already gentle as she helped Grasha onto her back, pushing up the leather tunic. "Owen, I need hot water, clean cloth, and more light. Move." Owen moved. He stoked the fire, hung the kettle, and lit every lamp he owned. He tore up an old shirt for clean rags and brought them to Delia, who had her hand on Grasha's belly, feeling the contractions. "How close are the pains?" Delia asked. "Close," Grasha managed. "Every minute, maybe less." "That is too fast for a first baby." Delia's frown deepened. She examined Grasha and her expression grew more concerned. "Owen, help me get her to the bed. We need her elevated." Together they managed to lift Grasha, who despite her pain tried to help, her strength evident even in her weakened state. They laid her on Owen's narrow bed, propping her up with every pillow and folded blanket they could find. "The baby is coming whether we are ready or not," Delia said. "Grasha, when the next pain comes, you need to push. Do you understand?" "I understand." Grasha's voice was thread-thin but determined. What followed was the longest 3 hours of Owen's life. He had seen men die on battlefields, had held friends as they bled out in his arms, but somehow this was more terrifying. Grasha's pain was beyond anything he had witnessed, her screams echoing off the cabin walls until he thought they would shake the roof down. Delia worked with calm efficiency, guiding and encouraging, her prejudice seemingly forgotten in the face of the task at hand. Owen found himself holding Grasha's hand at some point, her grip crushing his fingers with strength that would have broken a smaller man's bones. He murmured encouragement, words he did not even remember afterward, just trying to give her something to focus on besides the pain. "That is it, push. I can see the head," Delia's voice cut through. "One more, give me one more big push." Grasha bore down with a scream that was more battle cry than human sound, every muscle in her body straining. Then suddenly, the cabin filled with a different sound entirely, the thin, angry wail of a newborn. "It is a girl," Delia said, her voice filled with wonder despite herself. She worked quickly, clearing the baby's mouth and nose, cutting the cord. A perfect little girl. Owen watched, transfixed, as Delia cleaned the baby and wrapped her in a blanket before laying her on Grasha's chest. The infant was smaller than he expected, her skin a lighter shade of green than her mother's, her tiny face scrunched up in protest at being born. Small nubs that would someday be tusks were barely visible at her jaw. Grasha looked down at her daughter with an expression that Owen felt in his soul, exhausted, relieved, overwhelmed, and utterly in love. "Shara," Grasha whispered. "I will name you Shara." "She is beautiful," Owen said and meant it. Delia was still working, delivering the afterbirth and checking to make sure there was no excessive bleeding. Finally, she sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. "You did well," she told Grasha. "Both of you are going to be fine, I think. But you need rest and good food to build your strength back. The next few days are critical." Grasha nodded, unable to take her eyes off her daughter. "Thank you, I did not think any human would help me." "I almost did not," Delia admitted. She looked at Owen. "Your mountain man is very persuasive." "He has a good heart," Grasha said softly. "Not many would have ridden through the night for someone like me." "Someone like you is a woman who needed help," Owen said gruffly, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "That is all that mattered." Delia began packing up her things, her movements slow with exhaustion. Dawn was just starting to lighten the eastern sky visible through the cabin window. "I need to get back before too many people are awake. Owen, can you see me down the mountain?" "Of course." "Wait." Grasha struggled to sit up more fully, wincing. From a pouch at her belt, she pulled out a small object and held it out to Delia. It was a carved stone amulet, intricately detailed. "This is orc-made. It brings protection and good fortune. Please take it for your kindness." Delia stared at the amulet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it. "Thank you. Rest now, and if there is any fever, any excessive bleeding, you send Owen for me immediately. Do you hear?" "I hear." Owen walked Delia out to the horse. The older woman was silent as she mounted, looking back at the cabin with an unreadable expression. "Are you going to let them stay here?" she finally asked. Owen had not thought that far ahead, had been so focused on getting Grasha through the birth that he had not considered what came after. But now, looking at his cabin with the lamplight glowing warmly, knowing there was a newborn baby inside, he knew there was only one answer. She has nowhere else to go. Every door in Millbrook is closed to her. And yours is open, I guess it is. Delia smiled faintly. "You are a better man than most, Owen Xerxes. Try not to let it get you killed." She touched the amulet now hanging around her neck. "And do not tell anyone I was here, for both our sakes. Your secret is safe." Owen watched her ride down the trail until she disappeared into the trees, then turned back to his cabin. His cabin that was no longer quite so solitary. He found Grasha had fallen asleep, baby Shara nestled against her chest, both of them breathing deeply. They looked vulnerable and perfect and utterly trusting that he would keep them safe. The weight of that trust settled on Owen's shoulders like a physical thing. He was not sure he was worthy of it, but he would try. Over the next few days, Owen discovered that having a new mother and infant in his small cabin changed absolutely everything about his life. The easy solitude he had treasured was shattered by the sounds of crying, the constant need to keep the fire stoked to maintain warmth, the endless washing of cloths and preparation of food. Grasha was weak from the birth and needed help with even simple tasks, though she hated admitting it. "I should not be so useless," she muttered on the third day as Owen brought her a bowl of venison stew. "I am taking advantage of your kindness." "You just pushed a whole person out of your body," Owen said bluntly. "You are allowed to rest. Eat your stew." Grasha took the bowl with a grateful nod, balancing it carefully while Shara nursed. The baby had settled into a rhythm of eating and sleeping, her cries vigorous when she was hungry but otherwise surprisingly peaceful. Owen found himself fascinated by how tiny she was, how delicate her fingers were when they curled around his thumb. "May I ask you something?" Grasha said between bites of stew. "Go ahead." "Why do you live alone up here? A man like you should have a wife, children of his own." Owen was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "I was in the war, the border conflicts. When I came back, I could not stand being around people anymore. Too many memories, too much noise. Up here it is just me and the mountain. It is easier. You fought against my people." "I did." Owen met her eyes. "I killed orcs, a lot of them. I followed orders and I did my duty and I hated every minute of it, but I did it anyway. Does that disgust you?" Grasha considered this. "My mate fought in that war too, on the other side. He killed humans. He thought it was honorable, defending our lands. Then a human arrow found his throat in the Battle of Stone Ridge, and he died thinking he was a hero." Her voice was bitter. "War makes killers of everyone, human or orc. I do not hold your past against you. I care more about what you do now." "And what am I doing now?" "You are giving shelter to someone everyone else would see dead." That speaks louder than old battlefields. They fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the crackling fire and Shara's small nursing sounds. Owen found himself studying Grasha when she was not looking. Her face was broad and strong-boned, her green skin marked with small scars that spoke of a hard life. But when she looked at her daughter, her expression softened into something achingly tender. She was, he realized, beautiful in a way he had never expected to find an orc beautiful. The thought unsettled him. He pushed it away and went outside to split more firewood. Winter deepened its grip on the mountain. Snow fell in heavy curtains, sometimes trapping them in the cabin for days at a time. Owen taught Grasha how to play chess with his crude wooden set, and she taught him some words in the Orcish language. Shara grew plumper and more alert, her eyes focusing on faces now, a toothless smile appearing when Owen made funny sounds. "She likes you," Grasha observed one evening as Owen held the baby, bouncing her gently. "She has good taste," Owen replied, then smiled when Shara grabbed his beard and pulled. "Or maybe not. She sees you as family already. Babies know these things." The word family hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither seemed ready to address. Owen carefully did not look at Grasha as he gently extracted his beard from Shara's grip. It was in the third week that supplies began to run low. Owen had laid in stores for one person through the winter, not three, and the extra mouths meant the food was disappearing faster than expected. He would need to make a trip down to Millbrook for provisions. "I do not like you going to town," Grasha said when he told her his plan. "If they find out you are sheltering me, they will not find out. I will buy supplies and come right back. It will be fine." But Owen's confidence proved misplaced. He ran into trouble the moment he walked into Anderson's general store, where Martha Anderson was behind the counter and her husband George was restocking shelves. "Owen Xerxes," Martha said with exaggerated surprise. "What brings you down from your mountain?" "It must be something important to venture out in this cold." "Just need supplies," Owen said, keeping his voice neutral. He began gathering flour, salt, coffee, and other essentials. "Quite a lot of supplies," George observed, coming over. "More than you usually buy, you expecting company." "Just stocking up. It is a hard winter." "Funny thing," Martha said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. "Delia Ambrose was seen riding up your way a few weeks back, middle of the night, looking mighty purposeful. Some folks are wondering what business she might have had with a bachelor living alone." Owen's jaw tightened. Delia's business is her own. "Except when it involves helping one of them creatures," George said bluntly. "Word is, that pregnant orc who came through town begging for help headed up toward the mountains. And then Delia rode out, and now you are buying enough food for more than one person. People are starting to add things up, Owen. People should mind their own business. It becomes our business when you bring monsters into human territory," Martha snapped. "We fought a war to keep them out. Good men died. And good orcs died too," Owen said, his voice hardening. "But I am not having this argument. I want to buy my supplies and leave." "We do not have to sell to you," George said. "This is our store." Owen looked at them both, seeing the hatred and fear in their eyes. These were people he had known for years, people who had always been cordial enough. But the war had poisoned everyone, turned neighbors into strangers. "You are really going to refuse me service because I might be helping someone in need?" "We are refusing you service because you are harboring one of them," Martha said. "And if you do not get that creature off this mountain, there are men in this town who will do it for you." The threat was clear. Owen felt cold anger settle into his bones. "If anyone comes up my mountain with violence in mind, they will regret it. I fought in the war too, and I still have my rifle. You tell your friends that." He turned and walked out without the supplies, his hands clenched into fists. Behind him, he could hear Martha and George already gossiping, spreading the news. By nightfall, everyone in Millbrook would know that Owen Xerxes was sheltering an orc and her baby. He rode to 2 other stores, but found doors closing as he approached. Word traveled fast in small towns. Finally, old Henry Oakes, who ran a small trading post on the edge of town, waved him over. "I will sell to you," Henry said quietly, "but only if you take the supplies and leave quickly, before anyone sees." Why help me when everyone else is turning their backs? Henry smiled sadly. Because I am old enough to remember when humans were the ones being persecuted, back when the elves ruled these lands. I remember hiding in cellars, hoping the fair folk would not burn our homes. Every race has been the monster at some point, son. Some of us just have longer memories than others. Owen bought what he needed, grateful beyond words. As he loaded up his horse, Henry spoke again. Be careful, Owen. There are some men in this town who fought in the war and have not let go of their hate. They are talking about riding up to your cabin. Soon. Let them come. That attitude will get you killed, or worse, get that woman and her baby killed. Henry fixed him with a serious look. I know you are a good man, Owen, but sometimes good men need to know when to run. Owen thought about that all the way back up the mountain. Should he tell Grasha to leave? Find somewhere else to go. But where would she go? She had climbed this mountain as a last resort with no other options. He could not just throw her out into the snow to die. The truth was, he did not want her to leave. The realization struck him as he guided his horse through a narrow pass. Somewhere in the past few weeks, he had become attached to having Grasha and Shara in his cabin. He liked hearing Grasha's voice, liked watching her care for her daughter, liked the way she laughed when he told stories about his younger days. The cabin felt less like a refuge from the world and more like an actual home. He was falling for her. An orc woman. The very idea should have been absurd, taboo, impossible. But his heart did not seem to care about any of that. Grasha was waiting anxiously when he returned. I was worried. You were gone so long. Town was not exactly welcoming. Owen unloaded the supplies, then told her what had happened. Grasha's face grew more tense with each word. I should leave, she said immediately. I am bringing danger to you. This is not fair. Where would you go? It is the middle of winter. You have a newborn baby, and every settlement for 100 miles will turn you away. Then I will go back to the orc lands. My clan, she stopped, looking away. What about your clan? My clan exiled me when they found out I was pregnant by a mate who died in battle. They said I was weak, that I should have died with honor beside him rather than survive to carry his child. Orc culture does not accept weakness. Her voice was bitter. So I am not welcome among orcs or humans. I am nothing. Owen crossed to her, taking her shoulders gently. You are not nothing. You are a mother, a survivor, and one of the strongest people I have ever met. And you are welcome here in this cabin for as long as you want to stay. Grasha looked up at him, her amber eyes shining with unshed tears. Why are you so kind to me? You do not owe me anything. Maybe I do not. But Owen stopped, the words catching in his throat. He had spent 5 years avoiding emotional connections, telling himself he was better off alone. But now, looking at Grasha, he found himself wanting to say things he had never expected to feel again. I care about you, both of you. That is why. Owen. Grasha's voice was whisper soft. Her hand came up to touch his face, her rough palm gentle against his beard. I care about you too, more than I should, more than is wise. They stood there for a long moment, the space between them charged with possibility. Then Shara started crying, needing attention, and the moment broke. But something had shifted, some acknowledgement had been made. That night, as they lay in their separate bedrolls by the fire, both of them were acutely aware of the other's presence in a way they had not been before. The men came a week later, just as Henry had warned. Owen was outside chopping wood when he heard the horses approaching. He set down his axe and picked up his rifle, moving to stand in front of the cabin door. Grasha was inside with Shara, and he would not let anyone past him. 8 riders came into the clearing, all of them armed. Owen recognized most of them. George Anderson carrying a shotgun. Tom Whitaker and his 2 sons, all holding rifles. Jacob Stone, the blacksmith with a hammer on his hip. And leading them, predictably, was Cadden Murdoch, who had been a sergeant in the war and still wore his uniform coat like a badge of honor. "Owen Xerxes," Cadden called out, not dismounting. "We have come about the orc." "She has a name," Owen said coldly. "It is Grasha. And she is under my protection." "Your protection does not mean much against 8 armed men." Cadden smiled, but there was no humor in it. "We are not here to hurt you, Owen. We just want the orc. Hand her over and we will all ride away peacefully." "Hand her over so you can what? Kill her?" "Kill her baby. We will do what needs doing," Tom Whitaker said. "Orcs do not belong in human lands. We fought a war to establish that." "The war is over," Owen said. "And even if it was not, a woman and her newborn child are not soldiers. They are not a threat to anyone." "Every orc is a threat," Jacob Stone growled. "They breed like rats and they will overrun us if we do not keep them out." Owen felt his temper flaring. "That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Grasha came here seeking help because every midwife in Millbrook refused to touch her. She almost died giving birth because of your hatred. How does that make any of you heroes?" "It makes us smart," Cadden said. "Now step aside, Owen. I would hate to have to shoot you, but I will if you force my hand." Owen lifted his rifle, aiming it squarely at Cadden's chest. "Then you better make your first shot count, because I promise you will not get a second." The tension ratcheted up immediately. The other men raised their weapons, everyone suddenly aiming at everyone else. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark. "Owen, do not be a fool," George Anderson said. "You cannot win this. There are 8 of us and 1 of you. Maybe. But I guarantee I take at least 3 or 4 of you down before you get me. Who wants to be first?" Owen's voice was steady, cold with determination. "Who wants to die today over killing a woman and baby? Anyone?" No one spoke. The men shifted in their saddles, suddenly less certain. "I fought in the war too," Owen continued. "I killed more orcs than any of you, probably. I have nightmares about it still. But you know what I learned on those battlefields? I learned that killing someone does not make you strong. It makes you haunted. Every face I put in the ground is burned into my memory. I cannot forget them, cannot escape them. Is that what you want? To add a woman and her baby to the ghosts that follow you?" "They are not people," Cadden insisted, but his voice lacked conviction now. "They are more people than you are being right now." Owen took a step forward, his rifle never wavering. "Go home, all of you. Leave us alone. We are not bothering anyone up here." "If we leave now, we will just come back," Tom Whitaker said. "You cannot guard her forever." "Then I guess we are going to have a long standoff." Behind Owen, the cabin door opened. He did not turn around, but he heard Grasha's footsteps as she came to stand beside him. She was not holding Shara, which meant she had left the baby safely inside. In her hands was Owen's hunting knife, a wicked blade that looked small in her large grip. "If you want to kill me, here I am," Grasha said, her voice ringing out strong and clear. "But you should know that I will not die easily. I am orc. We are warriors born. If you come for me, some of you will not leave this mountain alive." The men stared at her, and Owen saw some of their faces registering surprise. Perhaps they had expected a cowering creature, not this fierce woman standing tall despite having given birth less than a month ago. "And if you somehow kill both of us," Grasha continued, "then you will have murdered an innocent woman and left an infant to freeze to death. That is what you will tell your families tonight. That is the story you will carry. Are you proud of that?" Silence. Long, heavy silence broken only by the wind whistling through the pines. Finally, Cadden lowered his shotgun. "This is not over," he said, but it sounded like a weak threat. "We will be watching." "Watch all you want," Owen replied. "Just do it from a distance." The men turned their horses and rode away, disappearing back down the mountain trail. Owen did not lower his rifle until they were completely out of sight, and even then he kept it close as he turned to Grasha. "That was dangerous," he said. "You should have stayed inside." "And let you face them alone? I think not." Grasha's hand was shaking slightly as she lowered the knife. "Do you think they will come back? Maybe, probably, I do not know." Owen suddenly felt exhausted, the adrenaline draining out of him. "But we held them off today. That counts for something." Grasha stepped closer, and then she did something that shocked him. She hugged him. Her arms were strong around his chest, her head against his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for standing with me." Owen slowly brought his arms up to hold her back, feeling how perfectly she fit against him despite their different builds. "Always," he heard himself say. "I will always stand with you." When they separated, both were acutely aware of the moment they had just shared. Grasha's cheeks had darkened with a blush that showed even through her green skin. Owen found himself wanting to pull her close again, to say more, but Shara's cry from inside reminded them of more immediate concerns. The rest of the day passed in tense watchfulness. Owen kept his rifle by the door and periodically checked the clearing for any signs of the men returning. But night fell without incident, and eventually they settled into their evening routine. "What if they bring more men next time?" Grasha asked as she nursed Shara by the fire. "What if they bring the whole town?" "Then we will have to make a choice," Owen admitted. "Stay and fight or leave and find somewhere else to go." "Where would we go?" "I have been thinking about that. There are settlements in the far north past the mountains. Mixed communities where humans and orcs live together, or so I have heard. It would be a hard journey, especially with winter still here, but it might be safer than staying." Grasha was quiet for a long time. "You said you would come with us." "Of course I would come with you." Owen met her eyes across the fire. "Did you think I would just send you off alone? I thought you loved your mountain, your solitude." "I did, but things change." Owen leaned forward, his voice intense. "Grasha, these past few weeks with you and Shara here have been the happiest I have been in years. I know that sounds crazy. I know we come from different worlds, that there are 1,000 reasons this should not work. But I do not care about any of that anymore. I care about you. Both of you. And I want to keep you safe, whatever it takes." Grasha's eyes were wide, her breath catching. "Owen, I feel the same, but a human and an orc together, it is forbidden by both our peoples. They will hate us, hunt us. We would be outcasts forever. I have been an outcast for 5 years already. At least this time I would not be alone." Shara had fallen asleep at Grasha's breast, milk-drunk and peaceful. Grasha looked down at her daughter, then back at Owen. "If we do this, if we leave and make a life together, there is no going back. You would be tied to me forever. To us. Are you certain that is what you want?" Owen stood and crossed to her, kneeling down so they were at eye level. He took her free hand in his, feeling the calluses on her palm that matched his own. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I do not know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you." Grasha's eyes filled with tears. "I never thought I would find someone who could see past what I am to who I am. You are a gift, Owen Xerxes, a miracle I do not deserve." "You deserve everything good in this world," Owen said fiercely. "And I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to give it to you." He leaned forward, hesitating just a moment to give her a chance to pull back, but she did not. Instead, she met him halfway, and their lips touched in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and absolutely perfect. Her tusks pressed against his face, a reminder of their differences, but it did not matter. Nothing mattered except this moment, this connection. When they separated, both were smiling. "So we are doing this?" Grasha asked. "We are really leaving, starting over somewhere new as soon as Shara is strong enough to travel and the worst of winter has passed. We will need to prepare, gather supplies, plan our route. But yes, we are doing this. That night, they pushed their bedrolls together, and for the first time since Grasha had arrived, Owen held her as they slept. With Shara nestled between them, they formed a makeshift family, born of desperation and kindness and something that felt dangerously close to love. Over the following weeks, they prepared for the journey north. Owen traded with Henry Oakes for warmer clothing, extra blankets, and preserved food that would travel well. He reinforced the sled he used for hauling wood, turning it into something that could carry a baby and supplies through snow. Grasha regained her strength, and Shara grew bigger and more alert each day. They did not see anyone from town during this time, but Owen knew they were being watched. Occasionally, he would find tracks in the snow near the cabin, evidence that someone had been observing them. The threat hung over them like a sword, making them hurry their preparations. On the last night before they planned to leave, Owen sat by the fire sharpening his knife while Grasha sang a low, orcish lullaby to Shara. The words were harsh sounding to his ears, but the melody was hauntingly beautiful. "What does it mean?" he asked when she finished. "It is a song about the mountains and the sky, about being free and wild. My mother sang it to me when I was young." Grasha smiled sadly. "I miss her sometimes. She was exiled too for refusing to kill a human child during a raid. I come from a long line of orcs who could not do what our culture demanded. Sounds like you come from a line of orcs with consciences. We are considered weak because of it, but I would rather be weak and kind than strong and cruel." Owen set down his knife and came to sit beside her. "You are not weak, you are the strongest person I know." Grasha leaned against him, Shara still cradled in her arms. "I am frightened, Owen, of the journey, of what we will find in the north, of whether we can actually make this work." "I am frightened too," Owen admitted, "but I am also excited. For the first time in years, I am looking forward to the future instead of just surviving day by day. That is because of you. We are very different, you know. Our cultures, our languages, even the way we think about things. There will be arguments and misunderstandings. Probably. But we will figure it out together." Grasha turned to look at him, her expression serious. In orc culture, when two people decide to build a life together, they perform a bonding ritual. They cut their palms and mix their blood, binding themselves to each other. It is considered unbreakable. "Would you do that with me, Owen? Would you bond yourself to an orc?" Owen did not hesitate. "Yes. Absolutely yes." Grasha's smile was radiant. "Then we should do it now before we leave, so we start our journey already bonded." She retrieved a clean knife from her pack and held it out to Owen. He took it, understanding what was needed. With steady hands, he drew the blade across his left palm, watching blood well up. Then he handed the knife to Grasha, who did the same without flinching. They pressed their palms together, blood mingling, and Grasha spoke words in Orcish that Owen did not understand but felt the weight of. Her eyes never left his as she spoke, her voice solemn and resonant. When she finished, she translated. "I said, I give you my strength and accept yours. I pledge my protection and accept yours. From this day until my last day, you are my bonded, my family, my heart. In blood we are bound." "In blood we are bound," Owen repeated, the words feeling sacred. "From this day until my last day, you are my bonded, my family, my heart." The moment felt monumental, like the world had shifted slightly on its axis. They were no longer just two separate people helping each other survive. They were something more now, something new. They wrapped their hands to stop the bleeding, and Grasha laughed suddenly, giddy with emotion. "I cannot believe we just did that. I am bonded to a human. My ancestors would be horrified. Mine too, probably. But I do not care what our ancestors think. I care about our future." That night they truly became a family, not just in declaration but in spirit. When they slept, It was with the certainty that they belonged to each other now, for better or worse. They left at dawn, the sled packed with everything they could carry. Owen had written a note and left it on the cabin table, addressed to anyone who might find it. The note simply said, "Gone north. Do not follow." He doubted it would stop anyone truly determined, but it was a statement of intent. The journey was brutal from the start. Winter had not yet released its grip on the mountains, and they traveled through snow that sometimes came up to Owen's knees. He pulled the sled with Grasha walking beside him, both of them bundled against the cold. Shara was wrapped in so many blankets she looked like a small cocoon, but she stayed warm and mostly slept through the travel. They made slow progress, sometimes only covering a few miles in a day. At night, they would build small snow shelters and huddle together for warmth, feeding Shara and eating their rations before collapsing into exhausted sleep. Owen's muscles ached from pulling the sled, and Grasha's feet blistered despite her tough orcish constitution, but they kept going. On the 5th day, they encountered their first real danger. They were crossing a frozen river when Owen heard the ice crack beneath his feet. He had just enough time to shove the sled toward Grasha before the surface gave way, and he plunged into the frigid water below. The cold was instantaneous and devastating, shocking all the air from his lungs. The current immediately tried to drag him under the ice, and he fought desperately to find the hole he had fallen through. His heavy coat became waterlogged, pulling him down. Panic seized him as his fingers scraped uselessly against the underside of the ice. Then strong hands grabbed his coat, hauling upward with incredible force. Grasha had thrown herself flat on the ice and was pulling him out with raw strength born of desperation. Owen's head broke the surface and he gasped, coughing up river water. Grasha dragged him completely out of the hole and away from the weak ice, not stopping until they were on solid ground. "Do not you dare die on me," she snarled, already pulling off his soaked clothes with shaking hands. "Not now, not after everything." Owen could barely speak, his whole body shaking violently. Grasha stripped him down to his skin and wrapped him in every dry blanket they had, including the ones from Shara's cocoon. The baby woke and started crying, unhappy about the cold, but Grasha ignored her for the moment, focused entirely on Owen. "I need to build a fire, but I cannot leave you. You need body heat." Grasha made a decision, stripping off her own outer clothes and crawling into the blankets with Owen, pressing her warm body against his frozen one. "Hold on, just hold on." For several terrifying minutes, Owen thought he might actually die. His core temperature had dropped so low that even Grasha's heat was not enough to stop the shaking. But gradually, painfully, warmth began to seep back into him. Grasha held him the whole time, rubbing his arms and legs to encourage circulation, her breath warm against his face. Shara's cries finally forced Grasha to shift her attention. She managed to nurse the baby while still keeping Owen wrapped close, an awkward juggling act that would have been funny under other circumstances. Eventually, Owen's shaking subsided to occasional tremors, and he could speak again. "Thank you," he croaked. "You saved my life. Of course I did. You are my bonded. I am not going to let you drown." But Grasha's voice shook with residual fear. "Do not do that to me again." "I will try not to." They could not travel for the rest of that day or the next. Owen needed time to recover from his brush with hypothermia, and several of their supplies had been soaked when the sled tipped during the rescue. They made camp and dried everything they could, using a fire that Grasha managed to coax to life with damp wood and pure stubborn determination. As Owen regained his strength, he watched Grasha care for both him and Shara with tireless devotion. She never complained, never suggested they should turn back, just quietly did what needed doing. Her resilience amazed him. "You are staring," Grasha said without looking up from where she was mending a tear in one of the blankets. "I am admiring." She glanced at him then, a smile tugging at her lips. "There is nothing to admire. I am just doing what must be done." "That is what I am admiring. Your strength. Your determination. The way you never give up." Grasha set down her mending and crawled over to him, checking his forehead for fever. Satisfied that he was recovering normally, she settled beside him. "I have to be strong. I have you two to protect now." "We protect each other," Owen corrected. "That is what being bonded means." "Yes, I suppose it does." They resumed their journey 2 days later, both of them more cautious about crossing ice. The landscape gradually changed as they moved north, the mountains giving way to rolling hills and then to vast frozen plains. The cold here was different, less wet but more piercing, wind that cut through their clothes and made their faces numb. They were 3 weeks into their journey when they finally saw signs of civilization, smoke rising in the distance, indicating hearth fires. As they drew closer, they made out a settlement of perhaps 30 buildings, constructed from a mix of wood and stone. What made Owen's heart lift was the diversity visible even from a distance. Humans and orcs moving together through the streets, working side by side. "Is this it?" Grasha asked, her voice hushed with hope. "Is this one of the mixed communities?" "I think it might be." They approached cautiously, unsure of their welcome. A guard post at the edge of town was manned by both a human and an orc, both wearing matching furs and carrying spears. They watched Owen and Grasha approach with professional interest but no hostility. "Travelers," the human guard said. "Where are you coming from?" "South," Owen answered. "We are looking for a place to settle, somewhere that accepts both humans and orcs." The orc guard grinned, revealing impressive tusks. "Then you found the right place. Welcome to Frostbridge. We do not care what color your skin is here, only whether you are willing to work and follow the laws." The relief that flooded through Owen was almost overwhelming. "Thank you. We are both willing to work. I am a hunter and woodsman, and my bonded is strong and skilled." "Bonded?" The human guard looked between them with raised eyebrows. "A human and an orc bonded. That is unusual. We are aware," Grasha said dryly. "Is it a problem?" "Not here. Like Garak said, we do not care about that stuff in Frostbridge. You will find a lot of unusual pairings in town." The guard waved them through. "Head to the community hall, the big building with the green door. Chief Cora will want to meet you and get you settled." Owen and Grasha exchanged glances, hardly daring to believe it could be this easy. But they moved into the settlement, pulling their sled behind them. People stopped to stare as they passed, but the looks were curious rather than hostile. An orcish woman waved at Grasha. A human man nodded respectfully to Owen. The community hall was warm and well lit, a fire roaring in a central hearth. Behind a large desk sat Chief Cora, who turned out to be a stern-looking orc woman with gray streaking her black hair. She looked up as they entered, her eyes quickly assessing them. "New arrivals," she said. "We do not get many people traveling in deep winter. You must be desperate or running from something." "Which is it?" "Both," Owen admitted. "We need a fresh start. Somewhere we can build a life together without being hunted for what we are." Cora's expression softened slightly. "Bonded?" "Yes. Children." Grasha carefully unwrapped enough of Shara's blankets to reveal the sleeping baby. "One daughter, 2 months old." Cora stood and came around the desk, peering down at Shara with the expression of someone who had seen many babies in her time. "She is healthy, very healthy," Grasha confirmed. "Good. We can always use more children. The community is growing." Cora returned to her seat and pulled out a ledger. "Here is how things work in Frostbridge. We are a communal settlement. Everyone contributes what they can, Everyone shares in the harvest and hunt. We have laws about violence, theft, and respecting boundaries. Break those laws and you are exiled. Follow them and you are welcomed. There are empty cabins on the north side of town. Pick one and it is yours. Any questions? It seemed almost too good to be true. Owen found himself waiting for the catch, the hidden condition that would make this impossible. But Cora just looked at them expectantly, waiting for an answer. "No questions," Owen finally said. "Just gratitude. Thank you for accepting us. Save your thanks. Show me you are willing to work and be part of this community. That is all the thanks I need." Cora made a note in her ledger. "Welcome to Frostbridge. Try not to freeze to death your first night." They left the community hall in a daze. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. Shara woke and started fussing, hungry and cold. But for the first time in weeks, Owen felt something unclenching in his chest. They had made it. They were safe. The cabin they chose was small but well built, with a solid roof and a good stone fireplace. Previous occupants had left behind some basic furniture: a bed frame, a table, 2 chairs. It was sparse, but it was theirs, and that made it feel like a palace. That first night in Frostbridge, they made love for the first time, their bodies coming together with a tenderness born of everything they had survived. Owen traced the scars on Grasha's green skin with reverent fingers, and she mapped the contours of his body with her larger hands. Their differences did not matter, only the connection between them, the bond that had been forged through crisis and sealed in blood. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Shara asleep in a makeshift cradle nearby, and talked about the future. What they wanted to build, how they would contribute to the community, what kind of life they could give their daughter. "I want her to grow up knowing she is loved," Grasha said quietly. "I want her to never feel like she has to choose between being orc or being human. She is both, and both are beautiful. She will know," Owen promised. "We will make sure of it. And maybe one day, if we are blessed, she will have brothers or sisters." Owen pulled back slightly to look at Grasha's face. "You want more children? I want everything with you, a whole life. A family, a future where we do not have to run or hide." Grasha smiled, and it transformed her face. "Is that foolish?" "No, it is perfect." They fell asleep in each other's arms, exhausted but content, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. The weeks that followed were busy ones. Owen established himself as a skilled hunter, bringing in game that the community butchered and preserved. Grasha proved her worth in other ways, her orcish strength making her invaluable for the heavy labor of frontier life: hauling water, chopping wood, clearing snow. The other residents welcomed them with an easiness that still surprised Owen after the hatred they had faced in Millbrook. Shara thrived in the warmth and safety of Frostbridge, growing plump and happy. She was a favorite among the other women, who would coo over her and offer advice on everything from teething to sleeping. Grasha accepted their help with grace, forming friendships with both human and orc mothers. One evening about 2 months after their arrival, Owen was sitting outside their cabin repairing a harness when a rider approached. Owen's hand instinctively went to the knife at his belt, old instincts never quite forgotten. But the rider raised both hands in a gesture of peace as he dismounted. It was Henry Oakes from Millbrook. "Easy, son," Henry said. "I am not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to see if you made it." Owen relaxed slightly but did not move his hand from the knife. "How did you find us?" I asked around. "Heard about a human and orc bonded pair with a baby settling in Frostbridge a few months back. Figured that was probably you." Henry smiled. "I brought you something." He pulled a package from his saddlebag and handed it over. Owen opened it carefully, finding several books inside, along with a letter sealed with wax. "The books are for you and Grasha," Henry explained. "Figured you might want some reading material out here. The letter is from Delia Ambrose. She wanted me to give it to you personally." Owen broke the seal and read quickly. Delia's handwriting was neat and precise. "Owen, I hope this letter finds you well and that you and Grasha made it safely to wherever you were heading. I wanted you to know that your actions changed something in this town. After you left, I started speaking out about what happened, about how we turned away a woman in desperate need and almost caused 2 deaths through our prejudice. Some people listened. Not everyone, but some. We have a small group now that meets weekly to discuss how we can be better, how we can let go of the hatred the war created. It is slow work, but it is work worth doing. You showed me that kindness matters more than fear. Thank you for that reminder. I am wearing the amulet Grasha gave me every day. It has become precious to me, a symbol of what we can be when we choose compassion. Be well, be happy, and give that baby girl a kiss from the old midwife who helped bring her into the world." Delia Ambrose. Owen felt his throat tighten as he read. He handed the letter to Grasha, who had emerged from the cabin when she heard voices. She read it silently, her expression softening. "There are good people everywhere," she said quietly. "Even in places filled with hatred, there are lights in the darkness." "That is poetry," Henry said with approval. "You always were a thoughtful one, Grasha, even if I have only just met you proper." He tipped his hat to her. "I will leave you two in peace now. Just wanted to make sure you were settled and pass along that letter." "Wait," Owen said. "Would you tell Delia something for me? Tell her thank you, and tell her that we are happy here, truly happy." "I will tell her." Henry mounted his horse, then paused. "For what it is worth, Owen, you did the right thing. Not the easy thing, but the right thing. That counts for something." They watched him ride away, disappearing into the twilight. Grasha leaned against Owen and he wrapped his arm around her waist, holding her close. "You miss it?" Grasha asked. "Your mountain, your old life?" "Not for a second," Owen replied honestly. "That was not living, that was just existing. This is living. You, Shara, this community. This is what I was meant to find. I feel the same. I spent so long being rejected by everyone, orc and human alike, that I forgot what it felt like to belong somewhere. But I belong here, with you, with our family." Shara started crying inside the cabin, her wail carrying through the open door. Both Owen and Grasha turned toward the sound automatically, their parental instincts fully activated. "She is hungry again," Grasha said with a laugh. "That child has the appetite of a warrior. She gets it from her mother." They went inside together, back to their warm cabin and their crying daughter and their simple, perfect life. Owen built up the fire while Grasha settled into the rocking chair they had been given by a neighbor, Shara latching on to nurse with the single-minded determination of the very young. As Owen watched them in the firelight, his bonded and his daughter, he felt a peace settle into his bones that he had not known since before the war. This was what he had been searching for without knowing it. A home built on love rather than loneliness, connection rather than isolation. The winter slowly gave way to spring, snow melting to reveal the rich earth beneath. Frostbridge came alive with activity as everyone prepared for planting season. Owen and Grasha threw themselves into the work, learning the rhythms of communal farming alongside hunting and gathering. Shara had her first birthday in the warmth of early summer, surrounded by friends who had become family. She took her first wobbly steps at the celebration, staggering between Owen and Grasha while everyone cheered. Her skin was a lighter green than her mother's, her small tusks just starting to emerge. She had Owen's dark hair and Grasha's amber eyes, a perfect blend of both her parents. "She is going to be beautiful," one of the human women said fondly. "And probably twice as strong as any of us with that orc blood." and twice as stubborn with that human blood," an orc man added with a grin. Everyone laughed, and Owen felt that sense of rightness again. This was what the world should be. Different peoples living together, celebrating their mixed heritage children, building something new from the ruins of old hatreds. That night, as they put an exhausted Shara to bed after her big day, Grasha turned to Owen with a familiar look in her eyes. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice both nervous and excited. "What is it?" "I am pregnant again. About 2 months along, I think." Joy exploded through Owen, immediate and overwhelming. He swept Grasha into his arms, spinning her around despite her size and strength. "That is incredible. That is wonderful. When did you know?" "I have suspected for a few weeks, but I wanted to be certain before I said anything." Grasha was grinning, her happiness matching his. "Are you happy?" "Happy, I am thrilled. I am ecstatic. I am going to be a father again." Owen set her down gently, suddenly worried. "Are you okay? Do you need anything? Should you be working so hard?" "I am fine," Grasha laughed. "I am orc, remember, we are built for this. But yes, maybe I will take it a little easier this time, and we have Delia's address now. Perhaps we can write to her, ask for advice." "We will write tomorrow," Owen promised. He placed his hand gently on Grasha's belly, imagining the new life growing there. "Thank you, for this, for everything, for taking a chance on a lonely mountain man." "Thank you for riding through the night for me when no one else would," Grasha replied softly. "You saved my life that night, Shara's life, and in doing so you gave me everything I never knew I needed." They stood there in the quiet of their cabin, their daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, a new baby on the way, and a whole community of friends surrounding them. The journey from that desperate midnight, when Grasha had appeared at Owen's door, to this moment of perfect contentment had been harrowing and dangerous and absolutely worth it. Outside, Frostbridge settled into its evening rhythms. Lights glowed in windows, smoke rose from chimneys, and the sounds of laughter and conversation drifted through the warm air. In the distance, the mountains stood sentinel, the same mountains Owen had once hidden in, trying to escape his past. But he was not hiding anymore. He was living, truly living, with a family he loved and a future that stretched bright and promising before them. The baby arrived in late autumn, a healthy boy they named Owen, born with the help of 3 midwives and no complications. He had his father's strong build and his mother's green skin, another perfect blend of 2 worlds. Shara was fascinated by her little brother, constantly wanting to touch him and help care for him. As winter came around again, Owen found himself thinking back to that first winter when Grasha had burst through his door in desperate need. It felt like a lifetime ago, though barely 2 years had passed. So much had changed, so much had grown. One evening, as they all sat around the fire together, Owen spoke the thought that had been growing in his mind. "I have been thinking," he said, bouncing Owen gently while Shara played with her wooden toys at his feet. "I want to write our story down. Everything that happened, from the night you arrived to now, so that when our children are older, they will know how we fought to be together, how love can overcome prejudice and fear." Grasha looked up from the shirt she was mending, her eyes soft. "That is a beautiful idea. But who would want to read such a story? Our children will, and maybe their children, and maybe, someday, other people who need to know that it is possible to build bridges between different worlds." Owen shifted Owen to his shoulder, patting the baby's back. "I am not a writer, but I can try. Will you help me? Fill in the parts I do not remember or did not see. Of course. We will write it together, just like we built this life together." So they began, spending evenings by the fire recounting their story, writing it down in careful script. The tale of a desperate orc woman and a lonely mountain man who found each other in the darkest of times and built something beautiful from desperation and kindness. Years passed. More children came, filling their cabin with noise and laughter. Shara grew into a strong, confident girl who moved easily between human and orc friends, comfortable in both worlds. Owen showed signs of having his father's quiet nature and his mother's strength. Two more babies followed, another girl and another boy, each one a miracle. Owen and Grasha grew older together, their bodies marked by work and time, but their bond as strong as ever. They never forgot how they had found each other, never took for granted the community that had welcomed them. They became elders themselves eventually, respected members of Frostbridge. Their mixed family held up as an example of what was possible. The cabin expanded over the years to accommodate their growing family, rooms added on as needed. But the core remained the same. The original single room where Shara had been born, where Owen and Grasha had first declared their feelings, where they had begun building their life together. On their 20th anniversary of bonding, their children threw them a surprise celebration. The whole community turned out, humans and orcs together, bringing food and gifts and stories. Owen and Grasha stood together surrounded by the life they had built, tears in their eyes as they looked at what they had created. "You remember that first night?" Grasha asked quietly as the party swirled around them. "When I knocked down your door." "I remember everything," Owen replied. "I remember thinking my quiet life was over. I had no idea it was actually just beginning. I was so scared. I thought I was going to die, that Shara was going to die. I climbed that mountain as a last desperate hope, never imagining what I would find at the top. You found me, and I found you, and we found this." Owen gestured at the celebration, at their children and grandchildren, at the community that had become their home. "Not bad for one night's ride through the darkness," Grasha laughed, the sound rich and full. "Not bad at all." Their eldest grandchild, Shara's daughter, approached with a book in her hands. She was 10 years old, sharp-eyed and curious, with her mother's mixed features and her grandfather's dark hair. "Grandpa, Grandma, will you tell us the story again?" she asked. "About how you met and how you came to Frostbridge." Owen and Grasha exchanged glances, the same glance they had exchanged thousands of times over 2 decades. In it was love, partnership, understanding, and a shared history that bound them tighter than any words. "Of course," Owen said, settling into his chair while Grasha took hers. "Gather around, everyone. Let me tell you about the night an orc woman broke down my door in the middle of a snowstorm, and how that single moment changed everything." The family gathered close, young faces upturned and eager. And as Owen began to speak, recounting the story they all knew by heart but never tired of hearing, he realized this was his greatest achievement. Not surviving the war, not building a home, not even finding love where he least expected it. His greatest achievement was this: creating a family where human and orc blood mingled without conflict, where children grew up knowing that difference was something to celebrate rather than fear, where the wounds of the past could heal in the warmth of the present. Grasha reached over and took his hand as he spoke, their fingers intertwining naturally after so many years. Her grip was still strong, still capable of crushing bones if needed, but gentle when it touched him. His hand was weathered and scarred, marked by decades of hard work, but steady as it held hers. They were bonded, had been from that moment they mixed their blood, would be until their last breaths. Two people from different worlds who had built a bridge between them and invited others to cross. And as the story unfolded once again, with the children listening raptly and the fire crackling warmly, Owen felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for the desperation that had driven Grasha to his door. Gratitude for the courage that had made him ride through the night for a midwife. Gratitude for every hard moment of the journey that had led them here, to this perfect evening surrounded by love. The story ended, as it always did, with their arrival in Frostbridge and the beginning of their new life. The children clapped and asked questions, wanting details about specific parts. Owen and Grasha answered patiently, adding color and context to events that had happened 2 decades ago but felt as fresh as yesterday. As the celebration wound down and families began heading home through the warm summer night, Owen and Grasha stood outside their cabin, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. "No regrets?" Owen asked, an old question between them. "Not a single one," Grasha replied, the old answer. "None. Only gratitude that you came to my mountain that night, that you trusted me enough to let me help." "I did not have much choice," Grasha pointed out with a smile. "I was dying. But you chose to climb that mountain. You chose to knock on my door instead of another. You chose to let me ride for help. Those were all choices, and I am grateful for every one." Grasha leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture of affection they had shared countless times. "We made a good life, did we not?" "The best life," Owen confirmed. "A life worth living, a story worth telling, a love worth fighting for, always." They stood there in comfortable silence, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built something that would last long after they were gone. Their children would carry on, and their children's children, each generation a testament to what was possible when fear gave way to compassion, when hatred yielded to love. Inside the cabin, their youngest grandchild was already asleep, curled up on the bed where Shara had been born. The circle continued, each ending a new beginning, each story giving birth to the next. And in that moment, with stars overhead and love all around, Owen Xerxes knew he had found what he had been searching for all along. A home not built of wood and stone, but of hearts intertwined, blood mixed and promises kept. The mountain man who had once lived in isolation had become a father, a husband, a pillar of a community that thrived on acceptance. The orc woman who had been cast out by everyone had found a place where she belonged, where her strength was valued and her love was returned in equal measure. Together, they had ridden through the darkest nights and emerged into the brightest days. Together, they had built a future from the ashes of a broken past. Together, they had proven that love, real love, knew no boundaries of race or species or prejudice. And that, in the end, was the greatest magic of all. Not the kind found in spells or potions, but the everyday miracle of two people choosing each other, again and again, through every challenge and triumph. As they finally turned to go back inside, back to their warm cabin and their sleeping grandchildren and the life they had fought so hard to create, Owen took one last look at the stars. Somewhere out there, other people were struggling. Other mixed families were fighting for acceptance. Other love stories were beginning in the darkness. He hoped they would all find their Frostbridge, their community of acceptance, their place to call home. He hoped they would have the courage to ride through the night, to knock on unlikely doors, to trust in kindness even when the world offered only hatred. And he hoped that someday, when his story was told by generations he would never meet, it would give them hope. Hope that love could conquer fear, that compassion could overcome prejudice, and that family could be built from the most unlikely foundations. The door closed behind them with a soft click, sealing in the warmth and light and love. Outside, Frostbridge slept peacefully under the stars, a sanctuary born from the simple belief that everyone deserved a chance, that every life mattered, and that the color of your skin mattered far less than the content of your character. Owen and Grasha climbed into their bed, 20 years of history between them, and however many more the fates would grant ahead. They settled into their familiar positions, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders, their breathing synchronizing in the way of long married couples. "I love you," Owen whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Grasha whispered back. "From the first night you opened your door to me until my last breath, I will love you, and I you, always." They drifted off to sleep, surrounded by family and community and the peaceful knowledge that they had lived fully, loved deeply, and left the world better than they had found it. Their story was one of countless stories playing out across the frontier, each one a thread in the larger tapestry of a world slowly learning to see past old divisions. But theirs was special to them, sacred in its simplicity. A mountain man who rode through the night for a stranger, an orc woman who trusted him with her life, and the family they built from desperation and determination and deep, abiding love. It was a story that would be told for generations, inspiring other unlikely pairs to take chances on each other, to build bridges across divides, to choose love over fear. And in that way, the ride Owen took that first night continued on, rippling out through time and space, touching lives he would never know, changing futures he would never see. But that first ride, that desperate journey down a frozen mountain in the darkest part of night, had started it all. One man's decision to help, one woman's courage to ask, one community's willingness to accept. From such small seeds forests grew. And in Frostbridge, under the watchful stars and protective mountains, the forest that Owen and Grasha had planted together flourished and grew, sheltering all who sought its shade, welcoming all who came in peace, and standing as proof that a better world was not just possible but achievable. The night deepened, dreams came, and in the morning there would be new challenges and new joys. But for now, in this perfect moment of peace, the mountain man and the orc woman slept in each other's arms, exactly where they belonged, exactly where they had always been meant to be. Their story was complete, their circle closed, their love eternal. And it had all begun with a desperate knock on a door, a ride through the night, and a simple choice to see another person's humanity rather than their differences. In the end, that was all it ever took. One person willing to help, one person brave enough to ask, and the conviction that kindness mattered more than fear. Everything else, all the beauty and love and family that followed, grew naturally from that single seed of compassion planted in darkness and brought to bloom in light. The mountain stood silent witness, as it had for countless years and would for countless more. But on its slopes, in a small cabin in a frontier town called Frostbridge, a miracle had taken root and grown into something that would never die. A love that transcended boundaries, a family that defied convention, and a hope that would echo through generations. And somewhere in the night, on some other lonely mountain, perhaps another door was opening, another unlikely connection being made, another story beginning. The world turned, time passed, but the truth remained constant. Love, when given the chance, always found a way. Owen and Grasha had proven that, and their proof would live on long after they were gone, a testament written not in words but in the lives of their descendants, in the acceptance of their community, and in the simple fact that they had chosen each other and never looked back. That was their legacy. That was their gift to the world, and it was more than enough. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient dance, indifferent to human or orc concerns, caring nothing for the small dramas playing out below. But in that indifference was a kind of blessing. The universe did not care about the color of your skin or the shape of your tusks. It offered the same stars to everyone, the same chance at happiness, the same opportunity to love and be loved in return. Owen and Grasha had seized that opportunity with both hands and built something beautiful from it. They had turned desperation into hope, loneliness into love, and fear into family. They had shown that it could be done, that the walls between people could be torn down, that a better world was possible if people were just willing to try. And in the morning, when they woke to another day in their hard-won paradise, they would try again. They would love their children, contribute to their community, and live as an example of what was possible when people chose compassion over hatred. But that was tomorrow. Tonight they simply slept, two souls at peace, two hearts beating as one, two lives so perfectly entwined that it was impossible to imagine them ever having been separate. The mountain man and the orc woman. The desperate midnight ride. The community that welcomed them. The family they built. The love that saved them both. It was a story for the ages, but more than that, it was their story. And it was exactly the story they had both needed, even when they had not known they were looking for it. Sometimes, the best stories found you when you least expected them, changing everything in a single moment of crisis and courage. That was what had happened on Owen's mountain that snowy night 2 decades ago. That was what had led to everything that followed. The journey, the bonding, the children, the life they had built together in Frostbridge. And as they slept through that peaceful summer night, surrounded by love and family and the evidence of their success, both Owen and Grasha smiled in their dreams, their hearts full, their souls content, their story complete. It had all been worth it. Every hardship, every moment of fear, every sacrifice made along the way. All of it had led them here, to this perfect ending that was also a beautiful beginning, to this moment of peace that promised countless more moments to come. The mountain man had ridden through the night for an orc woman he did not know, and in doing so, he had saved them both. Not just from death, but from loneliness, from despair, from lives half-lived in isolation and fear. He had saved them by choosing kindness over indifference, compassion over convenience, love over hatred. And that single choice had made all the difference. It was a lesson their children would carry forward, their grandchildren would remember, and their legacy would ensure. That one person willing to help could change everything, that love was stronger than prejudice, and that family could be found in the most unexpected places. The night held them close, the cabin sheltered them warmly, and the future stretched out bright and promising before them. They had everything they needed, each other, their children, their community, and the knowledge that they had lived well and loved deeply. What more could anyone ask for? What greater happiness could exist than this? A life built on mutual respect, strengthened by shared hardship, and enriched by love freely given and gratefully received. Nothing. There was nothing more to want, nothing left to achieve. They had won their happy ending through courage and determination, and sheer, stubborn refusal to let the world's hatred define them. And as the stars wheeled overhead and the night deepened toward dawn, the mountain man and the orc woman rested in each other's arms, exactly where they belonged, their story told, their love proven, their happiness earned and secured. It was enough. They were enough. And their love would endure as long as stories were told, as long as hope survived, as long as people believed that a better world was possible, because they had proven it was. They had lived that truth every day for 20 years. And they would continue living it for however many more years they were granted, a testament to the power of choosing love over fear, compassion over hatred, and unity over division. The mountain man had ridden through the night. The orc woman had trusted him. And together, they had found home. That was the beginning, the middle, and the end of their story. And it was perfect.